I can't believe you're actually telling me I'm not welcome at the family Christmas I paid for." The words barely left my mouth before my father's gaze pierced through me, sharp and unyielding. I stood frozen in the entryway of our suburban Connecticut home, the faint scent of pine from the freshly strung garland mingling with the rich aroma of mulled wine wafting from the kitchen. My name is Nathan, I'm 29, and for as long as I can remember, the holiday season has been both a battleground and a stage for my family's carefully curated appearances. On the outside, we might have seemed picture perfect. Dad in his crisp suits, exuding authority with every measured word. Mum, ever the peacemaker, floating along in her soft cardigans and syrupy reassurances. And my younger sister, Emily, the darling golden child whose antics were endlessly celebrated, and whose mistakes somehow transformed into charming tales. Then there's Mitha, quiet, hard-working one. Always present, but perpetually cast as the outsider. Christmas had always been their season. A predictable cycle of Emily receiving praise, Dad delivering his rehearsed lectures about tradition and family values, and Mom orchestrating a flawless tableau, while my own contributions and presence remained largely invisible. For years, I absorbed the subtle slights, the whispered comparisons, and the gentle reminders that my existence in the family hierarchy was conditional at best. Yet last year, something shifted. I had finally carved out a stable career, a comfortable apartment, and a financial cushion that allowed me to dream bigger. For once, I wanted to participate, not as an observer, but as someone who could shape the holiday. Someone who could leave a mark. That's how the chalet came into the picture. Nestled in the snow-dusted highlands of Vermont, it was the perfect winter getaway. A cabin-style retreat with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the slopes, a roaring stone fireplace, and a kitchen that promised cozy evenings of laughter and warmth. Weeks of searching, budgeting, and planning culminated in the reservation. $8,000 vanished from my account, but the investment felt worthwhile. I imagined a Christmas where I was not just tolerated, but appreciated, a season where my efforts would be recognized rather than overlooked. Even in my optimism, I shared the confirmation with Dad, thinking perhaps he'd acknowledge my contribution. Instead, his response was a cold, dismissive, "Good. That's the least you could do." I brushed it off, a practiced shrug to mask the sting. I wanted to believe this year would be different. Emily, however, had other ideas. Weeks before the holiday, she casually began posting about our family chalet trip, crediting Dad with the booking and leaving me invisible in her social media updates. When I questioned her, she flashed that irritating, self-satisfied smile and said, "Relax, Nathan. Nobody cares who booked it. It's Dad's idea anyway." That should have been my first warning. Yet, fueled by hope, I ignored the signs, convinced that once we arrived, the true spirit of Christmas would reveal itself. That gratitude might finally trickle down to me. The confrontation came on a crisp Wednesday evening in early December. I had stopped by my parents' home after work, carrying boxes of decorations, the kind that would transform a chalet into a winter wonderland. Dad was perched in his usual leather chair, swirling wine as if the world were his chessboard. Emily lounged on the couch, rehearsing outfits for the trip, while Mum moved quietly in the background, offering smiles that barely concealed her habitual neutrality. And then, like a hammer striking glass, Dad's words cut through the room. "You're not invited to Christmas this year." For a moment, I felt suspended in disbelief. "What?" I asked, uncertain whether I'd misheard. "You heard me," he replied flatly, swirling his glass. It's going to be a family-only Christmas. We don't need complications. You can do your own thing." Emily sneered from her spot on the couch, a practiced performance of entitlement. Mum, as ever, gave me a soft, pitying glance that made me feel smaller than ever. The sting was sharp, but clarity arrived simultaneously, like the cold air through the half-open front door. Everything I had hoped for, every attempt to earn acknowledgement, every ounce of effort to belong evaporated in an instant. Instead of arguing or begging, I simply nodded, laying the boxes down with deliberate calm. The words "fine" left my lips, quiet, controlled, but inside, my mind was already turning. I recalled the chalet reservation, my money, my effort, my planning, and as I stepped out of their home that night, leaving their smug faces behind, a strange sense of liberation took root. They had underestimated me. They had assumed their Christmas was safe, their dominance unchallenged, but they had no idea what I had in store. That night, I sat at my laptop, eyes fixed on the screen. I reversed the bank transfers, reclaiming the $8,000 I had sent, and clicked cancel on the chalet reservation. No penalty. The money returned to me, and the illusion of control my family believed they held began to unravel. I didn't notify them. I didn't gloat. I simply let the quiet satisfaction settle in, a slow, deliberate recalibration of power that had been denied to me for far too long. The morning after my silent reclamation of the chalet funds, my phone erupted with notifications, a flurry of missed calls, texts, and voicemails that could have melted steel. 31 missed calls, 12 voicemails, and then a single, chilling text from Dad. "Call me back now." My chest tightened. I didn't. Instead, I sat with my coffee, replaying his increasingly panicked voicemails in my mind. First came confusion. "Nathan, there's a mistake. The chalet reservation isn't showing on my account. Call them immediately." Then irritation. "This isn't funny. If you're pulling a stunt, undo it now." Finally, the wrath. "You think this makes you clever? You've embarrassed me. Fix this now." It wasn't the fact that I was excluded from Christmas that ignited him, it was the humiliation. His pride had been wounded, and Emily, naturally, was in overdrive, texting me with entitlement dripping from every word. "Are you seriously doing this? I've told everyone we're going to the chalet. Don't you care what this does to me?" I didn't respond. Silence had become my shield, my quiet weapon. Then, as predictable as the frost creeping across the windows, Mum arrived at my apartment. Bearing casserole in hand, she attempted her usual charms, offering soft words, as if her delicious gift could mend the gaping rift between us. "Nathan," she said, glancing around as if unsure where to begin, "you know your father's words were harsh, but there's still a way to fix things. This is about the family." I smiled politely and accepted the casserole, but inside, a storm of clarity brewed. Mum wasn't concerned about reconciliation. She was concerned about control, about managing appearances, about Emily's image. It didn't take long for their manipulations to escalate. A week later, an envelope appeared, taped to my door. Its cold typewritten message chilling in its finality. "Nathan, you are not needed in this family. Consider this a warning." Reading those words, I felt a strange mix of horror and liberation. The boy who had spent his life bending himself to fit their expectations, striving for their praise, was gone. In his place was a man who understood that if he owed them nothing, he could begin life on his own terms. Financial control, I realized, had been a hidden leash for years. Every time Emily overdrew her account or Dad's investments tanked, I had quietly stepped in. Every minor bill, every small favor had been a brick in a wall of obligations I hadn't chosen. That wall would no longer confine me. I changed my banking passwords, severed unauthorized access, and redirected my mail. I reclaimed my autonomy, faucet by faucet, expense by expense. At work, I doubled down. Projects I had once avoided became opportunities. Early mornings, late nights, meticulous focus each task completed added weight to my freedom. My supervisor noticed, rewarding diligence with increased responsibility and eventually promotion. My bank balance swelled. My apartment became a sanctuary, windows framing the Connecticut skyline like a reminder that I had built this life, not them. Friends I had distanced myself from, at the family's insistence, re-entered my life, reminding me that recognition and respect existed outside the hollow. Praise of a self-serving family, and as their texts and calls continued, dripping with veiled guilt and passive aggression, I felt only detachment. Emily's posts, painting me as the villain, bounced off a shield forged in years of invisible labor and unacknowledged patience. I didn't reply. I didn't justify. I simply let the facade unravel on its own. Their desperation was now evident to anyone paying attention, though they failed to perceive the quiet satisfaction growing within me. Every attempt to manipulate, every guilt-laden plea, every insistence that I fix their problem, was now met with strategic silence. My strategy evolved beyond simple defense. I began meticulously cataloging every interaction, emails, social media posts, bank notices, voicemails, each a puzzle piece in the pattern of their manipulation. Each document confirmed what I had long suspected. Their treatment was deliberate. They sought to erase me, to rewrite the family story so I would appear incompetent, ungrateful, and incapable. With evidence in hand, patience became my ally. I would not confront them immediately. I would let time and circumstances reveal the truth, letting the tension build until the moment of reckoning was inevitable. Then an unexpected ally emerged. My Aunt Claire, long skeptical of the family's favoritism, reached out. She had observed inconsistencies and was quietly sympathetic. Over coffee, we spoke tentatively, testing waters. She validated my experience, providing insight into family dynamics I had long tried to decode alone. "Your father's pride is his vulnerability," she said, stirring her tea. "And Emily's charm only works if people believe the story you're trying to overwrite." With her guidance, I began planning my next move, one that would be deliberate, public, and impossible to distort by mid-December. The family continued their Christmas charade, blissfully unaware that the entire tableau rested on my contributions, my finances, and my silent observance. Every boast, every Instagram post, every gleeful announcement of the chalet trip was a thread in the web I was quietly unraveling. I stayed out of their orbit, attending extended family events where my presence, calm and composed, contrasted sharply with the anxious, entitled behavior of Emily and the rigid posture of Dad. Slowly, cracks appeared, whispers of doubt, fleeting glances of confusion, moments of realization that perhaps the narrative they controlled was unraveling. And through it all, I remained patient, silent, and vigilant, knowing the culmination of my efforts, the reveal would be as undeniable as it was satisfying. By late December, The chill in the air mirrored the tension I felt inside. Every time I saw a Christmas post from Emily bragging about the chalet, a quiet satisfaction stirred within me. She didn't know the truth. Her entire fantasy rested on a booking I had already cancelled, on money that had returned to my account, and on a narrative that had been carefully manipulated to exclude me. I watched, silent and calculating, while their illusion thrived on my absence. The opportunity to strike, however, would not be rushed. Timing was everything. I had collected everything: emails, screenshots, bank notices, voicemails, pieces of a meticulous puzzle. Each photo, each post, each message was a brushstroke in the picture of my family's duplicity. The more they flaunted their perfect Christmas, the more powerful my eventual reveal would be. They were digging their own hole, unaware that I was quietly building a ladder to climb out of it with grace and authority. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about liberation. I poured myself into work, expanding freelance projects and reconnecting with friends I had once abandoned at their insistence. Julian, my college buddy, became an unexpected ally. "You've been hiding your skills for too long," he said one afternoon over coffee. "If your family doesn't appreciate you, don't worry, other people will." That phrase echoed in my mind as I Success outside the family sphere became my armor. Every late night spent organizing contracts, attending meetings, or refining my craft reinforced my independence. Still, their attempts at manipulation persisted. Emily's texts grew increasingly desperate. "Nathan, you're ruining everything." Dad's veiled threats escalated. "You're sending a clear message about family loyalty." And Mum, the perennial peacemaker, continued her guilt-laden attempts. "I lie awake at night, worried about you." Each message was carefully catalogued, each interaction analyzed. I didn't react. I let them assume their words had power over me, while inside I was orchestrating a far more deliberate plan. Then came the email from Aunt Claire, a moment that changed everything. She had unearthed correspondence that revealed Dad and Emily were attempting to reframe the story to make me appear irresponsible and ungrateful. Emily, the supposed responsible one, hadn't contributed a dime. Yet they sought to cast me as the villain who had ruined Christmas. My heart raced as I read the chain of lies, but instead of panic, a calm clarity settled over me. The pieces fit. The narrative was complete, and the audience, the extended family, was about to see it unfold exactly as it had occurred. I spent the next week preparing for the perfect opportunity. The annual grandparents' anniversary celebration became the stage. It was an event where extended family, friends, and even Dad's business associates would be present, an audience that Emily and Dad would have assumed were firmly on their side. I methodically organized the evidence: the chalet confirmation in my name, the cancellation and reimbursement receipts, Emily's gloating posts, Dad's email chains, and the flagged bank fraud alert. Each document was a tool, and every detail had been placed to speak louder than any confrontation or outburst could. When Christmas arrived, I observed from a distance. My family remained blissfully unaware, tangled in their own illusions. Emily continued her Instagram charade, posing by her local ski resort as though it were the chalet. Dad monitored his network, anxious to preserve appearances. Mom hovered in the background, projecting calm while subtly manipulating perceptions. And I waited, composed, biding my time the week before the anniversary. I resumed attending casual family events, ensuring my presence was noted but unremarkable. Friends and distant relatives witnessed a version of Nathan they hadn't seen in years. Successful, confident, and independent. Whispers of doubt began to surface. People noticed my calm demeanor, the newfound clarity in my interactions, and the subtle competence that had always been ignored. Slowly, the cracks in Dad and Emily's facade began to show, small but undeniable. And then the day arrived. I dressed meticulously, a tailored suit reflecting both my success and my intent. The banquet hall, adorned with flowers and candles, was filled with family members who had known me since childhood. Dad and Emily were at the center, believing they controlled the narrative. Their confidence radiated too much. They didn't suspect that the story they had so carefully constructed was about to unravel in the most public, undeniable way possible. I entered calmly, smiled, and exchanged pleasantries. The subtle power shift was already in motion. Extended family members noticed my poise, and whispers of admiration and recognition began circulating. Emily's casual boasts about the chalet were ignored by those who had seen my presence and success. Dad attempted to assert control, but the undercurrent of doubt had begun. Their world, so meticulously arranged, had started to wobble without my intervention. And the truth that evidence, neatly compiled, undeniable, waited for the perfect moment. The evening of the grandparents' anniversary arrived like a slow-burning storm. I stepped into the hall, my tailored suit crisp under the warm glow of chandeliers. The chatter and laughter of family members filled the room, but beneath it all, I could sense the tension simmering. Emily was already at the center of attention, recounting her version of the chalet story to anyone who would listen. Dad hovered nearby, projecting calm control, though I could see the faint tightening around his eyes. Mum smiled politely, her posture betraying the anxiety she tried to conceal. I made my way through the crowd, shaking hands, exchanging pleasantries, and letting my presence speak volumes. Each nod, each smile, each confident gesture was deliberate. I wasn't here to argue, I wasn't here to beg, and I certainly wasn't here to beg for recognition. I was here to reveal the truth, quietly, deliberately, and without theatrics. My audience wasn't just Emily or Dad, was everyone who had been misled by their careful narrative. As dinner concluded, Emily predictably mentioned the chalet once again. Her voice carried over the murmurs of the table. It was such a disaster because Nathan bailed at the last minute. Honestly, Dad and I had to scramble, but you know some people just can't handle responsibility. The words hung in the air, a trap she had set for me. I took a deep breath, set down my drink, and spoke calmly. That's interesting, Emily, because from where I sit, it looked a little different. The room fell silent. Conversations died mid-sentence. Heads turned. Eyes shifted toward me. Dad's confident posture faltered, the corners of his mouth tightening. Emily's smug expression wavered as she glanced at her phone, realizing she might have spoken too soon. I reached into my bag and retrieved my laptop, silently gesturing for my cousin to assist with the projector setup. Moments later, the wall illuminated with the first slide, the chalet confirmation, my name and payment details prominently displayed. Gasps rippled across the room. The next slides followed seamlessly, the cancellation notification with reimbursement, Emily's gloating social media posts, Dad's email chain attempting to reframe the story, and the bank's flagged fraud alert. Each piece of evidence was undeniable. I didn't need to raise my voice or dramatize the situation. The proof spoke for itself. I simply stated the facts, calmly and clearly. This is what happened. I paid for the chalet. I was told I wasn't invited. And when I cancelled it, an attempt was made to use my account without my permission. The silence was deafening. Forks clinked softly against plates, conversations halted, and eyes widened in disbelief. Dad attempted to salvage the moment, his voice measured but strained. Let's not overreact. It was a misunderstanding. I shook my head, letting the words hang. A misunderstanding. Being deliberately excluded, misrepresented, and financially exploited hardly qualified as a mere misunderstanding. Mum's polite smile faltered, and Emily's eyes darted nervously. Unable to maintain her composure, one by one, family members processed the evidence. Whispers filled the room, confirming what many had suspected but had never seen so clearly. My aunt shook her head, murmuring, I knew something was off. Uncles and cousins exchanged glances, silently acknowledging the truth. Even Dad's business acquaintances, present as observers, leaned back, absorbing the depth of the deception. Their carefully constructed facade was crumbling, and there was no way to patch it up. Emily, desperate, attempted damage control, pointing to minor discrepancies and repeating her narrative of being the responsible one. But the truth was immutable. The slides on the wall left no room for reinterpretation. Dad's attempts at charm and rationalization faded in the face of tangible proof. Mum, once the calming mediator, was silent. For once, her words and manipulations held no sway. I didn't linger. My purpose was fulfilled. I had not yelled. I had not accused. I had merely presented the undeniable truth, allowing their own words and actions to condemn them. As I left the hall, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in my life, I had not only reclaimed my dignity, but had done so in a way that was unassailable. The room remained abuzz with conversation, but the focus had shifted. The family's illusions had been shattered, and the power dynamic, long skewed against me, had finally been restored. Outside, the winter air was crisp, and the city lights twinkled against the dark skyline. I breathed deeply, savoring the liberation. The fallout would continue, I knew, but I no longer feared it. For years, I had chased validation, twisted myself into the shape they demanded, and sacrificed my peace for the illusion of belonging. That chapter was closed. What remained was freedom, clarity, and the quiet satisfaction of having outmaneuvered manipulation with patience, precision, and self. The days following the anniversary gathering were surreal. My phone buzzed constantly, not with messages from Dad or Emily, who had largely disappeared into silence, but from cousins, aunts, uncles, and family friends who had been present that night. The tone of their messages was one of disbelief, quiet admiration, and validation. I can't believe they treated you that way, one cousin wrote. You were right all along, another added. It was as if the truth had finally rippled outward, touching those who had only seen fragments of the family drama before. For once, I didn't need to argue or prove anything further. The evidence had spoken for itself. Emily's attempts at narrative control on social media were futile. Screenshots of her gloating posts, coupled with the documented reality of my payments and the fraudulent attempt with my bank, had already spread across the family network. Her circle of admirers dwindled rapidly as the truth became undeniable. Dad's once carefully curated reputation, the one he had built with relentless control and performative perfection, began to erode. Business contacts stopped returning calls. Invitations vanished. The facade he relied on to command respect had cracked, and the cracks were widening daily. Meanwhile, my life outside the shadow of their manipulation began to flourish. The quiet strength I had cultivated over months of preparation translated into confidence and opportunity. My work thrived. Freelance contracts with Julian's contacts expanded into larger, more lucrative projects. I moved into a new apartment with expansive city views, the space symbolizing the life I was now building on my terms. I established routines that nourished my body, mind, and spirit. Early mornings at the gym, evenings of focused work, and weekends reconnecting with old friends who appreciated and respected me. The financial independence I had quietly amassed gave me a sense of security I had never known. I no longer needed to contribute to their whims, pay for their mistakes, or mediate the chaos they created. My savings, professional network, and personal growth became a fortress against manipulation and guilt. The life I had envisioned in secret, free from constant judgment, entitlement, and control, was no longer a dream. It was reality, built painstakingly and deliberately, and entirely untouchable by them. Emotionally, the liberation was profound. I no longer obsessed over their messages, guilt trips, or attempts to rewrite history. Silence became my weapon and my sanctuary. The tension that had defined my family interactions for decades evaporated. When I walked through the city streets, adorned with holiday lights, watched families gather in warmth and laughter, I felt no pang of longing. Instead, I experienced a quiet satisfaction, a sense of being fully present in my own story, unshackled from the roles they had imposed on me. Months passed. Contact from my immediate family dwindled to near nothing. They had no leverage, no narrative to control, no moral high ground left to claim. Meanwhile, I continued to grow financially, professionally, and emotionally. I cultivated relationships, pursued interests, and explored opportunities that had been previously out of reach. Each step reinforced the truth I had learned. My worth was not dictated by their approval, their gratitude, or their approval rituals. I had power, stability, and dignity, all earned, all deserved. Eventually, the full circle of liberation completed itself. The chalet, the holiday manipulation, the emotional exploitational became stories of the past, reminders of the person I had been and the life I refused to return to. I no longer needed to fight to be seen or appreciated within the confines of their world. I had created one of my own, authentic, respected, and secure. And in that life, I realized plus equals something crucial. The absence of toxic influence was a gift greater than any material possession or familial acknowledgement. Standing at my apartment window one quiet evening, the city lights sparkling below, I felt a smile stretch across my face, a smile of contentment, independence, and triumph. The power they had once wielded over me was gone. The validation I had long sought from them no longer mattered. What remained was mine, my peace, my life, and my freedom. And for the first time, I understood the rare, quiet joy of having lived through betrayal, endured, and emerged victorious.